Now we're
So
live.
we're gonna, all right, so let's
Okay.
just go back and we're just gonna do a quick summary then of what happened so that we
Okay.
can kind of maintain everybody's time. We called the meeting to order at about 3:34, I think it was. We did a roll call and had quorum. Thank you. We have made an amendment to the agenda to add new business and to change a line item to the pathway with transcript experience, which was materials that was sent over. In addition, we just went over like voting protocol that, when we're speaking for, against, or questioning, we'll add that into the chat. So if you're speaking for, you say for, against, type in against, or if you have a question, put question marks and kind of go back and forth equitably within that. And I think we're caught up then for the transcript purposes. So thank you for pointing that out, Jen, appreciate that. All right, so we've already approved all of this language except for what's in purple, because LPCD, which according to SBE bylaws, everything has to go through LPCD to be vetted first before it goes to SBE, the State Board of Education. So the question that came up was a concern around giving people options. So those who hold a 112 and a 113, which is going to become this combined certification of birth to grade 3, that they have the option to either keep their 112, 113, or move into the new endorsement. The question becomes, so we have some language here that Paige came back with CPRL as well. And I think the crux of it is allowing people flexibility to keep their 112, 113, and or move into whatever the new certification is without any major barriers for the ones who hold a 112 and a 113. The question is, does shall work in providing that flexibility, which is highlighted there in yellow? So I'll give everybody a minute to kind of look it over if they haven't already. Or should that shall be changed to something that is more flexible, like a may? And I'm going to lean into Karen here. Karen, in terms of legal language, what would provide more flexibility for candidates? Shall sounds very prescriptive to me, but is there something that provide language that would provide more flexibility for those who might want to?
May, I would recommend, would be better. It allows a lot more flexibility. Shall is usually interpreted as a mandate, something that you must do. So I would go with may. That would be that's been my experience, what I've seen in other settings, that it's more flexible for interpretation.
All right, so any board members currently with discussion or questions about this? All right, Jen, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to know, thank you for that, Karen, helpful. And I would like to know what Margaret and Julianne think about that change in language. That's my question.
Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome.
All right, go ahead, Julianne.
I was just going to say, when we see so this is saying that if you had one of the previous certificates, it shall be eligible. So it's basically saying no questions asked, you're going to automatically be eligible for this new extended, not requiring any additional coursework or testing or anything else. It's just like kind of like we did with kindergarten. 1 to 6 became pre-K to 6. Whereas if you want to say may and then say, well, maybe there are requirements you want them to have. Like I did a program that was pre-K to grade 3, but I didn't do anything with infants and toddlers. Do you want them to do something to add to expand infants and toddlers? Or do I have the infant and toddler ones and I want to do a little bit of elementary, because now you're going to be able to teach in elementary. So I just wanted to clear up how we would interpret shall. Like we would say that and say, oh, then you're going to get the new one. Shall, it mandates it that you're going to get this new endorsement without anything else. If you want to say may and then say I want them to do additional requirements, then that's where I would say may.
Right. Thank you for that. All right. Mel, go ahead.
Could you just say will?
Could we say will?
Will
what
be
would
valid.
I don't think they use will, and when they write the legislation, it's either may or shall is pretty typical.
All right.
Got it.
Of course not. We need to make it confusing.
Right. All right, Jen, go ahead.
Is Margaret on? Maybe I'm missing her.
I see her and she's got her hand up right after
Yes,
you.
my question is for her, what she thought of it, especially after Julianne's interpretation.
Margaret, what do you think?
All right, so this, I just want to refresh everybody's memory. This is in response to the Legislative Review Board saying that they were very concerned that the 112 and 113 holders might get riffed out. And so they wanted to know what the plan was to protect those endorsement holders. So OEC supports the language to protect the individuals. I think moving forward, you know, my broken record, OEC wants to see early childhood pedagogy and anything that has the pre-K component. But both of these already have that within it. And so it feels like it's a safe compromise in terms of what the Legislative Review Board was talking about. Does that answer your question, Jen?
I think
There's so many Jens on there.
I know, we have so many of us.
Jen Delaney.
Yes, I think it does, now that I have both perspectives.
All right, I see
Okay.
Kaylin's hand up. Go ahead, Kaylin.
I just want to
Maybe
add
not.
that if this goes through this way, we will set up the system to automatically adjust these educator certificates without them having to take any further action. So we will take that responsibility off them if it is written with a word like shall. If we go to a word like may, then they would have to physically submit an application to have us do that transfer of data and to change their certificate. So, they had to choose in the beginning which route they were going to go. So in this case, I think it's only fair to allow for shall. It's just that sometimes educators don't like when we just update their certificates if they didn't feel prepared for it. But in this case, it's definitely warranted. And we would pre-program the system to automatically grandfather those educators in.
Okay. And this aligns with our work statutorily of aligning and modernizing and streamlining the things that, within the endorsements and that kind of thing. So this works out. All right. Seeing no additional questions or concerns, I would cater a motion to accept the language with shall in there, just as is. I would cater a motion to accept the language as is and return it to LPCD.
I make a motion to accept the language as is and return to LP.
CD.
Help me out. CD. Thank you.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. That was Margaret and Mel Horton on the second. We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. I can call the names and you can record if that's fine, Karen. Myself, Jen Rodriguez, in favor. Oh, and just as a reminder, you can vote in favor, against, or abstain when we do the roll call. It's entirely up to you. So Jen Rodriguez, I'm in favor. Dr. Ritchie?
In favor.
Kristen?
In favor.
Elsa Batista?
In favor.
Tiffany? What? Not sure if she's on yet. Okay. Jen Delaney?
In favor.
Sarah Fitzsimons?
In favor.
Jenny Graves? Okay. Margaret Gustafson?
In favor.
Thank you. Shannon Marimon? Patrice McCarthy? Okay. Catherine Rowe? Bob? Deputy Commissioner?
In favor.
Thank you. Hamish McPhail? And Dr. Horton.
In favor.
The motion carries. Thank you all. I look forward to adding that back onto their agenda and moving it forward. All right. Let's see. Next is current tab. A lot of things open for some reason. All right, next we have not recommended to reinstate, but the amendment was the legal transcript experience pathway. So if you can pull that up for us, Karen.
And actually, Karen, if you want, I have it open on my screen. I can just share my screen instead.
Yeah, Karen, that's something that came in from May. That is the birth. We're looking for the legislative transcript experience pathway document.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so as has been brought up at a few of our meetings, and I forget which were the main board meetings and which were the ad hoc meetings, one of the concerns from Public Act 2441 is that because they repealed the regulation around transcript experience pathway, we would need to reinstate it. So I wrote this legislative proposal to reinstate the transcript experience pathway. Basically, our job as a board is to be responsible for streamlining and making flexible pathways for the educator profession. But the problem is in the Public Act, because they only listed 3 ways to get an initial cert, by the inclusion-exclusion principle, that means that the transcript experience pathway is kind of in jeopardy. But it's even more in jeopardy because the regulations that created the pathway itself were repealed and set to sunset in July. So knowing our goal as a board is to keep these flexible pathways open, we did not get to this in the ad hoc committee, so we did not actually vote to support this proposal. We just did not get to it, so I'm bringing it to this instead. But in the regulations, the transcript experience pathway shows up under 412A3. And this is for teachers who have had at least 20 months or 2 years of successful teaching experience. This is often used for teachers who were teaching at colleges or universities, at private or independent schools, from states that don't have enhanced reciprocity, or from other countries. Considering we can't have like a reciprocity agreement with another country, we have this transcript experience pathway instead. So for the experience part, the employer would fill out a form. It's currently called the ED 126, but it may change in the future. So that's the experience part. The teacher then also has to show that they have completed like their bachelor's degree, that they've got their coursework that corresponds to the initial certs for the field they're looking for. So that's the transcript part. And this particular pathway has been established since like 1998, and it currently represents about 15% of all initial certifications, right? So one of the concerns, the big concerns, is that if we allow this pathway to close by letting both the regulation expire and it being excluded from the Public Act, we are going to be closing a flexible pathway instead of keeping them open. I'm taking this data from Ajit's presentation from a few weeks ago, if you remember that. Transcript experience pathway is the purple, it's right at the top. And the reason that, as he mentioned, the transcript experience pathway has had fewer applicants going through this pathway is that this middle bar, the orange, was when the interstate agreements sort of opened up, right? So now that there's more people coming in through the interstate agreements, there's fewer going through the transcript experience pathway. So just a little bit more background, and then we'll get to the meat of it. The pathway, when it was neglected from the Public Act said there was these 3 ways to get an initial cert: complete an EPP or an alternate route program, or come in with an interstate agreement. So without statute or regulations to support the pathway, then this pathway would close in July. While that same section, section 6B, does establish a waiver process, that waiver process is the one we've talked about kind of at length, where there were, the education certification staff, they're going to go through all the candidates' credentials. They're going to make a portfolio. They're going to recommend an initial certification. They're going to present it to the State Board of Education. And they really cannot be asked to do that for an average of 426 additional applicants per year, right? That pathway is really not designed for the number of people that have been going through the transcript experience pathway. So my proposal is to not only reinstate the language in the regs, which we'll get to in the future, but also submit this legislative proposal to amend it to include the fourth pathway. So it still includes the complete an EPP as a pathway, complete an alternate route as a pathway, come in from another state, that's a pathway. And then item 4 is this transcript experience pathway. I think it's important that this language matches very closely to the regulation. So it doesn't just say like 20 full months of teaching without specifying that it has to be teaching in the subject area that's appropriate to where you want to get certified. That it has to be at a college or university or non-public or independent school or out-of-state public school while holding a valid teaching certificate. All of that language comes pretty much directly from the existing regulation that created this pathway. In this pathway, candidates still have to complete all their coursework and assessments as required by our statutes and regulations. But it's saying that instead of going to an EPP, they have this alternate pathway because they've done their work in one of these special settings that can't get them certified in other paths.
Thank you, Kristen. All right, I see Mel's hand up. Go ahead, Mel.
I was curious what is meant by the word service. It says full-time teaching or service in the subject area.
Should I?
Julianne, go ahead. Yep.
It means not only teachers, but if you have, for example, served as a school counselor or a school psychologist, so it lets you pull in special services as well, or if you have worked as an administrator. So it basically, because there's teaching and then there's other types of endorsements, so it broadens it for all areas.
Okay, and this is really not a trick question. I just really want to know the answer to this. Why would we, if they already have, they've completed an ed prep program?
They haven't.
Well, it says they have to by number 1.
So option 1 is a program. Option 2 is an alternate program. Option 3 is enhanced reciprocity. Option 4, that's the one that's being sunset, is someone who I didn't do a program, but I've been working at Kingswood Oxford for the last 5
Gotcha.
years.
Okay, that's what I was confused.
Yeah, I don't fit those others. And so that was a way that somebody could say, oh, I've been teaching math at a community college for the last couple of years. And so those people, then we take that experience and we say, okay, we look at the regs and say, regs say you need a bachelor's in a U.S. history course or whatever, and we bring them in that way.
Yeah, gotcha. I was confused. I thought you meant these were people who are maybe coming from another state and you're going to look at their trend. Yeah, and that's why I was so confused. I'm like,
yeah.
Why wouldn't we just certify? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Julianne. Go ahead, Kaylin.
Just want to add too that this is our way to service our international educators that are coming in here, because we don't have a U.S. equivalency for education in Poland or any other country in the United States. And also, you do pick up on an interesting point, Mel, where it talks about 20 months under a valid certificate in another state. If they don't come from an enhanced reciprocity state, part of our NASDAQ agreement really requires 30 months under a valid certificate to waive that recommendation. Now, if an educator did a program, say in Pennsylvania, and they taught for 20 months in Pennsylvania in under a certificate, we can still request the ED 125, the recommendation from the university. If we have those two things confirmed, then it's smooth. I mean, I know it gets like kind of mucky and confusing, but it's just our way to be able to bring anyone in case they didn't do a program in Pennsylvania, but they still, taught under a certificate. So it's just our way to try to include as many people as possible if they don't fit the standard mold.
Okay, Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none at this time, I would cater a motion to approve this legislative language and move it to LPCD and SBE.
So moved.
So moved by Kristen. Do I have a second?
Sarah's
I'm
giving
sorry.
a second.
Sarah's giving a second. Thank you. I don't see you on screen. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, is there any discussion for, against, or questions in addition to the prior? All right, seeing none, we'll go
It
into a
just-
roll call. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Ritchie, go ahead.
Just a question. I'm just looking at the final item B there, which is a pretty broad statement, giving permission to the State Board of Ed to waive any of the requirements. Is paragraph 4 needed if we have B, I guess is what I'm asking.
Kristen, go ahead.
So the 6B waiver, the one that goes through the State Board of Ed, is the one that is a significant amount of work for our certification staff. That's the one where they make their portfolio, they do their presentation. So we can't have hundreds of people going through that route. This would let it all be done by the certification staff through the course of the work that they're actually doing already. If we were to put the 400 something applicants per year through this portfolio process where they're like presenting this to the State Board of Ed, that would be extremely onerous for SBE. And actually, one of the things we voted on our meeting last Monday was that instead of having those portfolios reviewed at the State Board of Ed, that would come to us.
I know
So,
that.
so this law has already been in place. So notice that the language that's underlined is the change to the law. So 6B is already in place. So I
Okay,
guess
thank
if I
you. That's what
wanted,
I
I
needed
don't
to know.
need, yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I guess I didn't need to include 6B, but I was trying to keep section 6 of Public Act 2441 like all together so you could see where the changes were. So the changes were underlined.
Yes, thank you for clarifying.
Thank you, Dr. Ritchie and Kristen. Dr. Rowe?
So this question is for Julianne. First, thank you for being here to provide some professional guidance. Can you just tease apart what the difference is between the 2441 that we talked about the other day and then this 6B? Like how are they the same? How are they different?
Absolutely. So the one that we want to put back in is somebody who says, oh, I've worked for 2 years, and they can apply, and we don't have to go through a whole board report and try to go past everything. We can say, okay, here's, you have the experience, maybe you have this, you have a major, maybe you've passed the test, but oh, we did a course review and it turns out based on the endorsements, and now requirements and endorsements are going to change as you go and revisit them, but it says, oh, you need 6 credits in child growth and development and you have 3. So these people, I would be like, okay, just take 3 credits and you're good to go. It's a very simplified, it gives us a first chance to review and say, here's one pathway. If we present that pathway and the person's like, but I don't want to take those 3 credits, and so I want to be waived completely, that's when they would go to a deeper step where we do the whole portfolio and the board decides to exempt them from the requirements. So this is a way to say, you're going to come in, you're going to meet the same requirements that someone who did a program did, but like instead of having the school tell you what to take, we're going to tell you what to take. And we can bring them in more easily. And so as Jen was mentioning before, like you're going to have 400 files brought in front of the board, we could probably knock out, 390 of them. And there might be 10 under their special circumstances. They're like, well, they don't have this, but they have something else that might be equivalent. So it's a way to reduce the number that have to go the full pathway of this new waiver.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rowe. All right. Is there any other discussion or question at this time? All right, so I think, just remind me, Karen, did we made a motion to accept this and move it forward to LPCD and SDE or SBE, correct?
Yes,
And we had a
and
second on it
seconded,
already?
correct.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and move into our roll call vote then. Remember, as voting, you can vote for, against, or abstain for any of the votes. So I'll go ahead and call off the names, and if Karen can go ahead and record. So that's going to be Jen Rodriguez. I am voting for. Dr. Ritchie.
4.
Thank you. Kristen.
4.
Thank you. Elsa.
4.
Thank you. Is Tiffany on the line?
Yep, 4.
Thank you. Jen Delaney.
I vote 4.
Thank you. Sarah Fitzsimons.
I vote 4.
Is Jenny Graves on the line? Nope. All right. Margaret Gustafson.
4.
Thank you. Shannon Merriman.
4.
Thank you. Patrice McCarthy.
4.
Thank you. Catherine Rowe.
4.
Thank you. Bob Satoris. Not on. Okay. Deputy Commissioner Sonia Mayano.
I'm voting for it.
Thank you. Is Hamish McPhail on? Wasn't sure if they joined or not. All right. And Dr. Horton.
4.
Thank you. And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. Our next item of business is our recommend to allow to sunset. And Kristen will be speaking to these. Just as, you know, a reminder of the folks that were on the regulations ad hoc who've been working on this. I'm just going to state the names pretty quickly. Myself, Kristen, Margaret, Sarah, Patrice, Dr. Ritchie as an alternate, and Catherine Rowe. So those friends are also on this meeting as well. And they have provided the foundation for which we can kind of build on, make amendments to. So we appreciate the work involved there. So thank you. These are the recommendations allowed to sunset that were shared as part of the material drop. Kristen, if you want to go ahead and begin.
Sure. And before I go on to this next list, in addition to that legislative proposal for transcript experience pathway, I'm also in the regulations ad hoc going to be working on the regulation that also had that pathway created. So the regulation 412A is the one that created this pathway in the first place. Even though it was set to sunset, ad hoc committee can be expected to see that coming up soon. So looking at going both pathways. So if legislative doesn't work out, maybe it'll still be in regulations and we'll be able to keep all those candidates in our pool for educators. Right.
Thank you for
Okay.
clarifying.
Of course. So we know that Public Act 2441 listed a number of regulations, and it was kind of our duty as the board to go over them, see what needed to be edited, see what was safe to sunset. So the ad hoc committee and I went through pretty rigorously to go through which ones may be allowed to sunset. So all the ones on this list, and Karen, if you could go scroll down to 401C. We've read very carefully and did some double checking. So in 401C, one of the things we were double checking is we wanted to make sure that no one was continuously employed by one approved private education facility since September 1980. So essentially, this was the language to grandfather in a small class of employees, but it was only if they worked continuously at the same one private education facility since 1980 would not need to have a certification. So I had asked if the certification department could double check to make sure there was nobody that falls into this category. So we believe that 401C is good to repeal. We don't or to allow to sunset. We don't think anyone is currently been working in the same facility for quite that long. And that's going to make an edit to 401A later in a different document. I see there's a hand.
Julianne, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention, so you said we think we don't. I have a list, this old grandfathered list that originally there were 36 educators, and so that's why I went through and checked, and there was one who was still working about 2 years ago and finally retired. So I've checked all of them, and that's why we know there's not anyone who's still falls into that category.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, because that's one of the things I would have felt bad is if someone was working and think they didn't need certification and all of a sudden we change a regulation, you never know. Oh, there's another hand.
Go ahead, Dr. Rowe.
Is it the right time for discussion? Or are you still describing? I can wait. Quick question. Let's just say, because there's a teacher shortage and there's some new regulations and having people come back into the workforce. How does this sunsetting this, how does that help those teachers that may want to come back after post-retirement? Do they have to then reapply for certification underneath the new regs? Or is there any kind of pass for those folks that may wish? Oh, Julianne's got the answer.
I was just going to say, even if you left this in place, this only allows them if they continue. So if they've retired, they're already, doesn't apply to them anymore. So right now that section applies to no one. If they came back, then they would meet new regulations, or we'd look at, they would consider a pathway, a waiver, but this language isn't going to make a difference to them at this point.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Kristen.
All right. So 411, we feel is safe to sunset because we haven't offered as a state certificates of eligibility for many years. My understanding was this hasn't been offered in like more than 10 years. So we felt that this one was safe to sunset. Many of the rest of them are going to be regarding provisional educator certificate, which has been, eliminated as one of the offerings that we're going to be doing. And now we'll have the 2-tier certification system. So 415 should be sunset because we're no longer going to be offering a provisional educator certificate. $437, this was the requirements for provisional educator certificate for elementary. So now that we're not doing provisional, this one should be sunset. Same for world language at elementary. This is the provisional. So 442. So in 449, this one we said could be sunset because this was for elementary and middle grade certificates. And now with the increased endorsement range, we believe that 449 could be sunset. $452 is the provisional educator certificate requirements for secondary academic. But again, this was one of those provisional educator certificates. So we felt like that could be removed safely. Same with 473. This is for TESOL, teaching English to speakers of other languages, the provisional educator cert. $478, the provisional educator cert for bilingual education. For remedial reading and remedial language provisional cert. So these have all been repealed already. They're sunsetting in July, and this would be us confirming we're just going to let them sunset. Next one. For single subject special education, provisional educator cert. For comprehensive special education, provisional educator cert. Okay, and 609, I wanted to be careful of because what I didn't want to happen was to have provisional educators like potentially lose their certification. But if you read it really closely, this is to receive a professional educator certificate if you are in a provisional teaching certificate, which is not currently offered anyways. So I had asked Julianne and the other members of certification to check to make sure that 609 wouldn't impact anyone, because 609 is for only people who currently have a provisional teaching certificate. So not the provisional educator certificate. So it's safe to sunset 609.
Okay, thank you. Kaylin, go ahead.
I just want to add that, we were issuing provisionals up until 7/1/25 of this year, but we made sure to include any language around them as far as professional or as far as adding a cross endorsement to still include provisional. So it's not like we're leaving those educators behind. We no longer issue them anymore, but they are protected or recognized in statute in regards to advancing to professional or in regards to adding endorsements to their certificate.
Okay. Now, because they're already set to sunset and we're really just reviewing them, are we voting to allow these to sunset then officially, or are we just stating let them sunset because it's already been written into legislation?
I think it wouldn't hurt to just have it on the record that we have reviewed these. We think they're fine till at sunset, and this doesn't get sent anywhere after. So it doesn't have to get sent to the policy committee or the state board of ed. It would be nice to have it on the record that that's what we've looked through, and we've done our due diligence in looking at the details for all of these regulations.
All right, so then I would cater a motion at this time to approve the list to allow to sunset from the Public Act 2441.
So moved. Kristen?
Second.
And when I say allowed to sunset, I mean this specific document that we just reviewed, because there's other ones that we have recommendations for. All right, thank you. Is there any discussion or deliberation on that? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and take a roll call vote. Jen Rodriguez, yes. Dr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Elsa?
Yes.
Tiffany?
Yes.
Jen Delaney?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jenny Graves on yet? Okay, Margaret?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Patrice?
Yes.
Thank you. Catherine?
Yes.
Cynthia Sonia Mayano?
Yes.
Hamish is not here, and Mel Horton.
Yes.
All right, it passes then, and on the record that we agree that these should be sunsetted. Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is recommend regulations to repeal. We can pull that one up.
All right, it is on the screen, and as you can see, there were a large number of provisional educator certificate requirements, and they're all repeating the same thing. Essentially, that you have to complete a certain number of years of experience, complete the best program, and then do an additional coursework to become a provisional, or sorry, to complete best in order to get your provisional. So the Public Act had identified some provisional certificates to sunset, but not others. But since the Public Act also said that all provisional certificates will sunset, it has made all of these regulations you see before you obsolete. So we can quickly scroll through them, but please know that they are all just repeating the same provisional educator requirements. It repeats it for early childhood, library media specialists, agriculture, and aquaculture. So Karen, if you could just scroll down and stop for like a moment on each page, but it's going to go really quick because it's 28 nearly identical regulations, all about provisional. Right? So we have, they're all provisional educator requirements for agriculture and aquaculture. Keep going. We've got health occupations education, trade and industrial occupational subjects, provisional educator cert for marketing education, cooperative work education, occupational subjects in vocational technical schools, trade related subjects in vocational technical schools. We've got practical nurse education in vocational technical schools. So notice that all of these are just going to repeat provisional. So we've got health occupations, we've got school admin at vocational technical. Yep. We've got school nurse teacher, school dental hygienist teacher, school counselor, school psychologist, school social worker, school marriage and family therapist, reading and language arts consultant, intermediate administrator or supervisor, department chair, superintendent of schools, school business admin, high school credit diploma programs, external diploma program, and non-credit mandated programs. I think this is the last one. Yes, teaching English to non-English speaking adults. So in this case, we would be making a motion to suggest the repeal of all of these obsolete provisional educator certificate requirements. So I'm making a motion to suggest a repeal of all of these provisional educator certificate requirements.
Do we have a second?
Second,
Who was the second? I'm sorry.
Margaret.
Margaret, thank you. All right. Any discussion on that? I have a question. If we're doing a suggest repeal, would we not just amend it to repeal these and put it through the regulatory process?
I'm
Karen,
not sure about the wording.
okay. Karen, can you weigh in for the wording on the motion? The motion currently is to suggest a repeal, or would we be making an action to repeal?
I would just say recommend because as Kristen stated, they're already set to be repealed, correct?
No, not
these are not.
What was the motion again? Can you repeat the motion, please,
Yep,
Madam Chair?
my motion was to suggest or recommend that these provisional educator certificate requirements be repealed. And the reason I didn't say it as repeal outright is because I know it has all these other steps after, right? It's got to go to like the policy
Right.
committee, then SBE, and then through and then through the rest of the regulatory process. So I didn't know if the right word was to repeal or recommend to repeal.
I think recommend to repeal would be best because you're making a recommendation, right? So I think that would be best.
All right. Do you want to restate the motion then with recommend or amend the motion?
Sure, I'll just restate the motion with recommend. So I make a motion to recommend the repeal of the provisional educator certificates so listed.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second, Gustafson.
That was Margaret. Thank you. All right. Any discussion? All right. Seeing none, we'll move into a roll call vote on those. All right. Again, in favor, against, or abstention. Jen Rodriguez, in favor. Dr. Ritchie,
In favor.
Kristen,
Yes.
Elsa,
In favor?
Tiffany,
In favor.
Jen Delaney,
Yes.
Sarah Fitzsimons,
In favor.
Margaret,
In favor.
Shannon,
In favor.
Patrice,
In favor.
Catherine,
In favor.
Cynthia,
In
Sonomayana, thank you, and Mel Horton.
In favor.
Right, it carries. Thank you. We'll move that forward to LPCD and SBE. Next on our agenda is draft regulations for review.
Okay. Oh, it's different draft regulations. I actually have it on my screen, so I can pull it up. One sec. Okay. So the two sets that we've just looked at, one was allowing to sunset ones that Public Act 2441 had already identified. The next was kind of finding all the provisional ones the Public Act missed. So this is going to be more the meat of it, because this is where we're taking existing regulations, either ones that are set to sunset or others, and looking to make changes to them. So the ad hoc committee went through this already, and one of the things I want to note is it looks a little bit more difficult to read than usual, because in my draft, I had been looking at like a document about regulations and how the state likes their formatting. So anything that is bracketed is a removal. So right here, why this section of 401A is going to have a removal is because, well, all of us just agreed that we could remove 401C. So by removing 401C, we have to make an edit to 401A. So now, no person shall be eligible to serve for a Board of Education, unless a person holds a valid Connecticut certificate or permit appropriate for such position. And now there are no exceptions. Everyone needs to have a certificate. Under the certificate types, we are removing provisional educator and certificate of eligibility, which, as I mentioned, hasn't been offered in years. And that also updates which items or which regulation numbers are listed at the bottom here. So again, brackets are removals and then underlines are additions or suggested changes. Do I have any questions so far? I have to like keep going back to see the screen.
There are no questions at this time. If anyone does, they can raise their hand. I'll certainly jump in and might bump you off or cut you off there, Kristen. So,
That is
but not at this
okay.
time.
Excellent. Okay. So for the temporary 90-day certificate, this one was set to repeal. And because it was set to repeal, we want to still have guidance available for certification staff on when can the 90-day certificate be issued. And this was one of those where I was looking to conform to statute and current offerings. So my understanding is currently the temporary 90-day certificate is offered to graduates from ARC and graduates from, I believe, Charter Oak, but I could be wrong. I'm sure someone will step in and jump in and let me know. But basically,
Correct.
because good, I love when I get them correct. Because basically, when the student teaching is kind of abbreviated in these programs, then the graduate is offered the 90-day certificate, and their employing agent at their Board of Education is the one that signs off on their final certification. So in just these two special circumstances, they're doing this alternate route to licensure. They get their temporary 90-day certificate. They work their 90 days, and afterwards their superintendent or their designee or their employing agent recommends them for certification. So the 90-day certificate, we updated to no longer offer the middle grades education because that's not currently offered at either ARC or Charter Oak. Updating the, instead of concept or praxis 1 to praxis core academic skills for educators or its equivalent. And the equivalents are currently having to do with oh, I know ACT is one, GRE is one, SAT is one. So if it's Praxis Core or one of the other skills tests. And I like that this language that was pre-existing in the reg said or equivalent so that we didn't have to spell it out for each one.
Kristen, we have a question. Mel Horton, go ahead.
I apologize for this dumb question.
No such thing.
I didn't think we required a passing score on Praxis Core. I thought they just had to show evidence that they took the basic skills tests.
Sure. Does Julianne, do you want to speak to that?
I think Kayla
That
has her hand
is
up too, but yeah,
correct.
you're-
I was
that's
I'm sorry,
correct.
Kayla.
That's correct. Yes, that is correct.
You don't need to pass, you have to
That's
take
it.
it. Right.
But for
But-
certification purposes, we don't collect it. That's an EPP internal.
I know, but it says has achieved a passing
Yeah.
score. Does section 10-145D 404 say you no longer have to have a passing score? And I just don't see that section.
You could remove that section because we don't have to
could.
have a passing. I mean,
Right.
you could align it with the, but it's no longer a regulation for certification requirements.
Right. You could have it as enrollment requirements on your end, but we won't be looking for it on our end.
If that's something that people are interested in just removing, so having removed achieving a passing score so that we're not collecting data that we don't necessarily need,
Well,
then what I can do is at the end of this document, when I like move the document, I can move it with that as an amendment.
Okay, I see Dr. Rowe's hand up as well.
I would agree with removing it. That Praxis Core is supposed to be used for the EPPs for diagnostic purposes to support our candidates, and it should not be a barrier to students entering the profession.
Thank you, Dr. Rowe. And Jen, I see, Delaney, I see you're shaking, you're nodding your head. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
Yes, we were actually the last teacher prep program to remove that from entrance requirements because it was a huge barrier, especially for our international candidates and people who've been out of high school for 20 years. I know if I had to take that test right now, I need a lot of brush up on the math section. It's been a while. And it's diagnostic, exactly. And I don't know if this is appropriate time, but I was hoping to make a motion to remove B from the proposed document.
So I think what Kristen's doing is, what she did during the regs meetings is she would write down all of the recommendations and she would make one big motion for each of the recommendation. So I think, did you note that one then, Kristen? All right, so then I think we'll hear it again towards the end. Mel, go ahead. I see your hand there.
Okay, yeah, and I would just,
caution you against removing it because our accrediting body requires that we give some kind of basic skills test. They don't prescribe core, praxis core, but you have to do something. Unless Cape
yeah,
is looking to change that, maybe just say has a score on the praxis core or its equivalent.
may I respond?
Okay. Yeah, hold on a second. So it was Mel. I don't know why I keep getting these pop-ups, but go ahead, Dr. Rowe, then Jen Delaney. Go ahead, Dr. Rowe.
I agree with you, Mel, except can we keep that in the program level for accreditation and not make it a reg? I don't know that it needs to be a reg. If it's going to be something that we need to use for accreditation. Because we don't necessarily need to use Praxis. We could use SAT, ACT. It's just, I'm just posing the question as a.
Yeah, I don't know. I know we have to use something, but you're right. It's an accreditation decision and they could change their mind the next time they look at the standards and then we might not review these for another 50 years. So
well, hopefully that's not the case. Thank you. Jen, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, they do have to take it, like they have to have taken the SAT or the ACT and shown that they don't need to take the praxis core. Like our people still have to take it.
no.
In our program, they still have to take it.
It's a program requirement.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So because we want, like Dr. Rowe was saying, we want to make sure that if they don't have the SAT, and remember, we deal with a lot of international candidates because we have a large world language program. So there's also an assessment that they take in Latin America that is something that we look at, and then we ask them to take the praxis core if they haven't achieved what we are looking for, right? But we use it as a diagnostic tool. So maybe not completely removing it, but saying something like either, I don't know if it would help us. I'm just throwing it out there instead of saying has achieved, that they have taken it,
and
but not
just to
achieved.
kind of refocus the group, this is specifically for the temporary 90-day certificate. So to kind of like,
yeah, that's why I'm just kind of giving, sharing with what it is. But I also caution us to continue to think in the now. We have to think in the future because we are innovating for the future. So for example, like removing middle grades education, I don't think is wise because we don't know what could come in the future. And as a matter of fact, TRP just got approved for middle grades math, for example, and they don't use a 90-day cert, but I'm just saying, like in the future, maybe somebody would create something, or maybe we would add a middle grades program for some reason, if the need comes to be in 10, 15 years. So keeping these things in to maintain blankets for future innovation, I think is really important for us to remember. And I might have interpreted something incorrectly when you said it, Kristen, but just to have us continue thinking in the future.
Thank you. Kristen, go ahead.
Yeah, so Jen, would your recommendation be to leave middle grades education in as, one of the endorsement areas that can receive a 90-day certificate?
Yes, just in case our program or another program were to be developed, or maybe Charter Oak increases their offerings and adds middle grades, like, you know, just to keep it there, because what's the hurt of keeping it there? You know, instead of just saying, well, these are the only programs that use it now, so we don't need this, but we have to think of later. And is there anything I may be missing that isn't there that we should have there? As we're thinking of innovation for the future. So we have elementary, we have middle, we have secondary, special education, no, special subjects or field, special education, admin, supervision. Does ECE fall into that? I would imagine the special subjects, maybe. Margaret,
Margaret,
can you
go
help me
ahead.
out with that? Oh,
Well,
perfect.
I just want to ask, are we just listing everything? Can we list nothing? Can we, like, is there a way, this seems like we're just trying to think of everything possible. Maybe we can trim out words to get to the same goal. Because Jen, I agree with you, ECE would need to be listed as well, right? So then we're just on a long process of adding.
Julianne, go ahead.
I was gonna say you might do something like as available in, because it says it should be issued if they complete a board approved program in an existing endorsement area, period. And that way it's whatever's in, like that lets you create one. And I also wanted to touch back on B just to make sure, although Jen mentioned it, like this is specific to issuance of the 90-day certificate. So even if OHE ARC or any ARC program wants to require their students to take the Praxis core, you can, but what this language says is if you recommended them and they didn't take they didn't pass the score, we're prohibited from issuing it because they were required. Now we've had different laws come in that say no, you don't need it. But so I think for that reason, you could just remove it because again, it's just telling the State Department what do we have to look for before we can issue that 90-day certificate. But if you want to change it to has taken the Praxis core, you know, or equivalent, you could do that.
Yeah, you make a good point because that could be limiting for future innovation as well. Or yeah, we do it right now, but maybe in the future we didn't. And so then they wouldn't have that. So then the school board wouldn't have that automatic coming from us. It's a good point.
Thank you. All right. So do you have some notes there then for the first paragraph then, Kristen? And then B?
I do. I didn't know, Kaylin, if you had anything else to add on B.
I was really just talking about that beginning statement. You know, we talked about middle grades, but you know, the Charter Oak program is early childhood. So we might want to say early childhood and elementary education. That was just my thought.
But I think if we go with the language that Julianne had said, that kind of broader language, then it would be, you know, current endorsement codes or endorsement areas. And I think it would allow for that flexibility over time that we were talking about. Dr. Ritchie, I do see your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just a curiosity from the State Department, are there a lot of administrators that have a temporary 90-day certificate? No. Okay. And does this
that program doesn't exist? Years ago, there for a period of time there was an alternate route that Achievement First offered, but it didn't really go anywhere and it closed down. So it's just, again, they list them all in case someone wants to open a program. They can do it in any existing endorsement area.
Okay. Should we keep the word then administration and supervision in this?
I would say if you want to simplify and just say in any existing endorsement areas, then that's going to incorporate everything from early childhood teaching, special services, and it'll be for anything. That might be an easier way instead of having it so specified. We just say in any available endorsement area. That would include everything.
But then if I'm understanding correctly, that would mean that there is a blessing to give a temporary 90-day certificate to an 092 or 093.
If there was an existing, yeah, if there, and that's true, maybe you don't want superintendent, maybe you only want admin. So that's a decision between listing all the areas versus saying in any endorsement area. But again, this also depends upon there being an approved ARC program. So it's like someone who's completed, because you have to, the requirements are you have to complete an approved program. So if there's no program, we can't issue it anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jen Delaney, go ahead.
Yes, the other one that I wanted to talk out with everyone is the bachelor's degree requirement. So they do not have to have a bachelor's degree in the field or closely related, because they can take the Praxis 2 for the initial certification and not have the degree and move into an initial that way.
That's in statute,
So
correct?
yes, so that's just not relevant anymore since that change has been made. Because they need to pass the Praxis 2, or I think maybe other institutions, higher ed deans help me out. Other institutions might allow for a bachelor's degree or a Praxis 2, but at least at ours, we don't currently, we only do the Praxis 2. And if you have a degree, great. If you in that field, great. If not, that's okay too, as long as you pass the Praxis 2. And that might change based on things that change here. So
So is your recommendation to keep or to remove?
To remove it, because of this, the rules that changed before now make that moot point.
Right. Jen, or I'm sorry, Kristen, go ahead.
So my question is this language relevant for Charter Oak? Or is it only, so it's irrelevant for ARC, is it relevant for Charter Oak?
So to gain acceptance to an initial teacher prep program, the institution can accept that, okay, maybe you don't have a bachelor's degree in early childhood ed, and now you want to come into an initial teacher prep program, but you passed the Praxis 2. So we will accept that as your content knowledge versus a bachelor's degree in that field. Or like for you being a physics teacher, I know before, like when we did ARC, because we're ARC graduates, you had to have that degree that was in the field of physics or closely related, but that's changed since we became teachers. Now to get into initial, you can come into a program as long as the program makes that an entrance acceptance ability to have is, well, at my program, if you come in with Praxis 2 in that field, but you don't have a degree in physics, but you pass the Praxis 2, we can train you to become a physics teacher. So it's just irrelevant to any really initial cert.
I just want to recap.
Yeah, maybe Julianne might have something to offer before you recap.
Yes.
Julianne, go ahead.
Because I'm new here still. It's only been 3 years since I've been doing this.
I was just going to say that you could take out the part that says with a major in a closely related, because you need a bachelor's degree, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. Now for Charter Oak, for those individuals, they don't have to have a bachelor's degree in early childhood, but they do, that program requires them to have 15 credits in early childhood. There's like a certain course requirements, but it's not a major, so that's not something they look for. They necessarily have to have either, because there's coursework that they look for.
Perfect. Thank you, Julianne. Thank you, Jen. Kristen, do you want to recap before we move to the next one?
This has been good. Okay, so recapping. So from A, I think it makes sense to remove the language that says with a major in or closely related to the endorsement area. So now it reads, holds a bachelor's degree from an approved institution. And then from the consensus, it sounded like remove B, because these are already people who have graduated your program. And if your program did or didn't require Praxis, if you require it of your students, that's great. If not, still great. So edit A, remove B. Do we have and at the top to rewrite the top to remove in the endorsement areas of and replace all that big list with an existing endorsement area? Any thoughts on C? So they've graduated their ARC program. We wanted to
Jen?
replace Connect with Actful.
So this one is just a little cart before the horse, just because we haven't made a decision yet on if we're going to offer an alternate approach and or waiver to the Praxis 2. So we would just have to come back to this after we make those decisions and add that to this language.
Yeah. So as it stands, if we were to take like the existing us today, would that change from Connect to Actful still work?
Oh, I don't have familiarity with Connect. We only use Actful. We use Praxis 2 or Actful.
Right.
Is there
Connect's
something I
being
might be missing? 'Cause
removed.
my certification officer isn't here with me. Excuse me?
I think Connect is being removed, right? That's what the recommendation is with
Connect
the
is being
amendment.
removed.
Okay, so
And
that makes
Actful
sense
is
because I'm
being
not
added.
familiar.
Yeah.
And Actful is being added. Oh, because it's underlined, it's being added. Sorry, I misunderstood that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense because I'm only aware of Praxis 2 and Actful, so that makes total sense.
Yeah. Kaylin, go ahead.
But I also think
Oh,
in
sorry.
this, okay, thank you.
Jen,
I
go
also
ahead, go ahead.
think, thank you. I also think in this section, again, with thinking of forward innovation, maybe there's something that should be there. Like if a program were to pop up for, let's say, social work, an ARC program, or some other field that's in dire need in the future that we're looking to create an alternate route program, what else should be there from everyone's collective experience? This is just describing what we have now. Does that help, like, with future ideas? Or maybe we add something, or maybe we make the language more broad, like has achieved a passing score on the required assessments to gain certification to that endorsement, something more broad. What does everyone think?
That I was actually going to suggest something similar to that, because the SBE can adapt new tests at any time, like depending on where the research is. If someone with the academic office or the Board of Certification, we find something different, so tests can change. So if we're using broader language in the top, we may want to consider that for the testing requirement as well.
So maybe it says something along the lines of has achieved a passing score on content area tests as appropriate, and then section 404 is the list of testing regulations.
Okay, thank you.
That way it's really broad, and if additional testing comes up, then one of the nice things about how they've set up this board to run in the future is as changes happen every year, our board's ongoing goal is to keep the regulations up to date. So let's say things change in 5 years, hopefully our board will still be here to be updating and keeping it, you know, flexible as we go along. So I have passing score on content area assessments as appropriate, and then lists, or then refers back to 404.
Julianne, go ahead.
I just wanted to speak in support of that because like Connect and Concept are pre-Praxis 1, pre-Praxis 2. And we didn't have, like years ago, we took Praxis 2 instead of Actful, and then they changed it to Actful. So if you use a broad as, you know, the appropriate testing, what if down the road we say, oh, we're going to have more Pearson tests and fewer Praxis tests, or we're going to, you know, so it gives you flexibility to move among whatever tests are newly adopted as they change.
Thank you. Just to give people time frames, we're currently at 4:52, and I want to make sure that everyone's aware of the time in case anyone has to drop off at 5 o'clock. All right. Continue on. Jen Delaney.
Okay, I would like to chat about letter F, because yes, that is a requirement, I think, for most graduate programs, by Cynthia, of a 3.0. But there is times when somebody has, especially for graduate programs, right? Which our ARC program is. I would imagine most ARC programs in the future would be graduate programs. There are many times, like, you're dealing with career changers, and there are many times where, throughout the years, where you may have somebody who is just shy of that, and they kind of explain what happened in their bachelor's degree, but they have all this experience with kids, and they're great now in their current life. They're a great applicant, right? Someone who maybe has already been working in schools. That happens a lot with our programs. They're working in school in another capacity. Then they realize they actually do want to be a teacher. It doesn't happen very often, but there's always that. Give it